Hi, I'm Amy Vanz, and I am going to attempt to make a Dutch dish tonight, which I believe is pronounced Worstenbroodjes. I don't know, I could be wrong, but the first step in making this dish is to make the dough that encases the meat. So what I did here is I heated up 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons of milk on the stove, not to boil, just warm milk. And then I added 1 teaspoon of active yeast, and I'm waiting for it to get a little bubbly. Then over here I took 2 cups of all-purpose flour and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and also 2 teaspoons of sugar. So that's where I'm at right now as I wait for the yeast to bubble. We're back and ready to add the milk and yeast to the flour mixture. And once we've done that, we are going to mix that up a little bit. And then we're going to add 2 teaspoons, wait, I'm going to double check, 2 tablespoons of melted butter also. And drizzle that in. Alright. And then we're going to mix that. And then we're also going to add 1 egg. Alright, now we're going to take our dough out of the bowl and we're going to put it on our countertop, and we're just going to knead it for about 5 up to 10 minutes. But we just want to get it real soft and smushy. I don't know a technical term for it. But we'll do this for about 5 minutes and then we'll be back. Once you've kneaded your dough for about 5 minutes, you can see already the consistency of the dough is totally different than when I first started. You're going to put it in a bowl that has been greased. And I just put in a little oil and I just shook around my bowl, emptied anything extra out, and then put your dough in there, make sure it kind of gets covered with your oil, and then cover it up with a tea towel. And you're going to want to let it set in a dry, warm place for about a half an hour or so until it's grown at least 2/3 in size. So while that's going on, we're going to make the meat mixture. Thanks to Cousin Pete and the suggestion that he had, we took 1/2 pound of ground beef and 1/2 pound of pork, and we just kind of like a flash browning of them just to so that we could get some of the excess grease out of it. So what we did is we browned it just slightly and then laid it on this rack with some paper towel and kind of drained a lot of the excess grease off so that when you go to make the mixture, it's not super greasy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take, and I put them all in one bowl together, but it's a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and let's see what else. And Cousin Pete also suggested a 1/4 teaspoon of ground mustard, an 1/8 teaspoon of sage, and an 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder. So we're going to put all of that in our meat, along with a 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs, and a tablespoon of chopped parsley. And we were watching Rachel Ray the other day, and she said if you use dried ingredients like this, that you should kind of put them through your fingers and squish them up a little bit just to activate the flavor before you put them in your dish. And then we'll stir that all up. So before I go any further, I forgot to add the egg. So I went back and added the egg, and it made it a little bit easier to mix the ingredients together. I will say that making the ingredients with partially cooked meat is a little harder because then it's a little crumblier, but I do think it's probably the better choice just for the excess fat, getting it out of the meat mixture. So right now what I did is I divided up into 8 balls of meat, and then I am, oh gosh, and then I am now shaping them into sausage style. You can't, you know. Anyway, and then once we do this, we're going to cover them up so that the meat doesn't dry out, and then we'll go back to working with the pastry. So let's pretend my dough rose a lot more than it did. And what you're going to do is you're just going to punch it down a little bit. And then depending on how many of the sausage things that you made will determine how many rolls of dough you need. So I made 8. So the suggestion is to pull them apart, make them into kind of like rolls, and then while you're working on one at a time, keep the rest of them under a tea towel. That way they're not going to dry out while you're rolling one at a time. And the idea now is that you will place your dough on a surface and you'll roll it out so it's really thin. And in a moment, we will place one of our sausages in it and wrap it up. So, let's do that. Let's do the short one here. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your 2 sides, your shorter sides, I may have rolled that a little thin, and then pull the dough over, like so. Ooh. And you're just going to place it on your baking sheet. I don't have parchment paper. They suggest parchment paper, but that'll work for us. And then you do that as many times as you have your meat. Now that they're all wrapped up, we're going to cover them back up with a tea towel, and we're going to let them rise again for another 40 minutes or so. So I understand why people say that they use pre-made dough, but I just thought for my first time I'd do it the authentic way. Alright, the one thing I forgot to tell you before I put the things in the oven were that once you get them all wrapped and once they've done the rising for 45 minutes to an hour, you then brush it with an egg and 2 tablespoons of water mixture just so that it's shiny. And then you bake them for, we baked ours for actually 18 minutes, but if you look at them, you can tell like they're just starting to get brown on the top. They're starting to crack open. So my guess is that they're pretty much done. So that's it. And I can't remember how to pronounce it, so we'll let you know how it goes.